Indiana's newest Ford Lincoln dealer. We place the highest emphasis on our customers. We offer new and used Ford and Lincoln vehicles, parts, service, and used cars, including Focus, Fiesta, and more. For more information, drop by 3930 Franklin in Michigan City, Indiana, or visit them online at SowersAuto.com. Sowers Ford Lincoln, Northwest Indiana's newest Ford Lincoln dealer.
Back here on the Arena Sports Network, this is the Afternoon Locker Room presented by our absolutely wonderful friends at Gigahertz, the official computer solutions provider for the Arena Sports Network, Gigahertz, and that's where we come in.
And the second half of today's Afternoon Locker Room is driven by Sowers Ford, Northwest Indiana's newest Ford Lincoln dealer. Give them a visit at 3930 Franklin in Michigan City, Indiana, or ring them at 219-879-5381.
Al in Washington with Brian Snow from Snowman in the Morning on the Verizon Wireless Hotline, talking the blackness or perceived lack thereof in certain athletes. The focus today being Russell Wilson, the Super Bowl winning quarterback of the Seattle Seahawks. And as we were going to break, Brian, was just bringing up the fact of, some prominent black athletes on both sides of this issue have to deal with their perceived blackness, mostly because of who they're dating.
Mm-hmm.
And it comes up a lot.
You want a great example? Robert Griffin III.
Yep. RG3, who I understand from ESPN NFL insider Adam Schefter is very close to coming back to play. To maybe be another 3 weeks or so, but potentially coming back tonight against the Cowboys. But I said no.
Let's bring this point up about RG3. Remember before he got married, all the backlash he received before he graduated from Baylor, and people found out who he was dating. And when he got engaged, remember all that backlash that he got?
Well, it wasn't as
kind of multiplied.
It wasn't as loud as we're making this out to be because of the fact of what he was able to do on the field. It wasn't that loud because if that was the case, then we should be all over Lovie Smith for doing the same thing.
Yep.
And Lovie Smith from Texas, just like RG3, and his now wife happened to find her on a blind date way back when.
Mm-hmm.
And, who would ever thought an interracial marriage would come from a blind date?
Been there with that one because found Liz by accident in Indianapolis, Indiana on assignment. So there you go.
We digress. But getting back to Charles,
yes.
getting back to Charles Barkley's comments here. This is the one line that really brought it home for me. There are a lot of black people who are unintelligent, who don't have success. It's best to knock a successful black person down because they're intelligent, they speak well, they do well in school, and they're successful. It's just typical BS that goes on when you're black, man.
Yes.
Let me parse that first part of the conversation of that line. There are a lot of black people who are unintelligent. Notice he didn't say uneducated.
No.
And see, this is the differentiation that I make. You can have all the degrees and all this, that, and the other in the world. Where the intelligence level comes in is the application of said knowledge, said education, in a way that enhances your life. And, guys like Earl Graves, who took a flower business at Morgan State University and turned that into what is now the most respected black-owned, black-themed business magazine in the world in Black Enterprise.
Yes.
Take somebody like John H. Johnson, the late John H. Johnson, who took a $500 loan from his parents, and created what we now know today as Johnson Publishing Company, with two of the most iconic brands out there, Ebony and Jet.
Exactly.
All right. Madam C.J. Walker, the first black millionaire, using hair products that gave black women that straightened look in their hair. Made a fortune off of that. You know, the inventions that black people have made over the years that don't even get credit because of the time that they made them. We've got to remember, we're talking about coming out of slavery, coming out of Civil War, Emancipation Proclamation, into Jim Crow, where the channels of patents still were dominated by a perceived white supremacist umbrella, whereas a lot of those inventions were claimed by the slave master.
Right.
You know, one of the inventions that we take for granted, we see every time we drive down the street, and that's the traffic light. You know, an intelligent black man named Garrett Morgan created that.
Well, it's like you said this morning, having all the education, and this is something my grandmother taught me at an early age. Having all the book sense and the book smarts is one thing. Applying it is something completely different. And this is where, especially in the black community, the disconnect happens.
You know, you probably got it growing up. I know I did growing up getting it. It's like making the decision to buckle down in the books and get the straight A's and get on the honor roll was perceived as square, nerd, and all that stuff, when those same exact nerds make the same thing you looking at every 5 seconds texting somebody.
Here's something, and I got to relate this because I know I still get it today, and we're almost 20 years in the business. I ran into an old neighbor of mine on the south side. He said something to me that kind of crystallized every move that I have made from grammar school till now. When he and I were talking over dinner, he said, "Brian, I wish I had listened to you and all the times you were trying to help me and the rest of us learn some of the math that you've learned."
You know,
those were his words to me, and he coupled it with, "I wish I had learned from you how to not be afraid to go after what you want and desire." And that's only one part of the thing that we had talked about this morning on the morning show. You know, not being afraid to go after what you want.
You know, I hate to say it, folks, but guys like Russell Wilson should be applauded for the fact that they even are in this position. Not only him, we mentioned Doug Williams, Cordell Stewart, the late Steve McNair. And
think about this. You brought up a name of one of the quarterbacks that I love to watch, Steve McNair, out of Alcorn State. There is something that is in common with every black quarterback that we've mentioned: Doug Williams, Steve McNair, Colin Kaepernick, Russell Wilson, Cordell Stewart. They graduated near the top of their class.
Yep.
All of them graduated near the top of their class. So you're trying to tell us, and I say us because Vin and I had this discussion this morning, that graduating near the top of your class and making the decision that you just said a moment ago to buckle down and actually push through and run over people that get in your way academically is a bad thing? I got news for you. My late father made it a point to tell me when I was doing piss poor in class. That was my junior year at Fenger High School in 1988. He told me, he looked me in my eye and said, Brian, you're doing piss poor in your classes and you're slipping, and I do not accept that. When he told me that, step on the gas and run the rest of the way.
Talking with Brian Snow from Snowman in the Morning. You hear him every morning on the Arena Sports Network at 9 a.m. Central. Crazy stuff happens in the morning. I can witness firsthand. Crazy stuff happens in the morning. We're talking the blackness in pro sports and other stuff like that here on.
How about just the blackness in society?
Yeah, that can kind of go along with it too, but primarily sports.
Primarily sports.
The thing about this is, as we continue here on the Afternoon Locker Room presented by Gigahertz, Russell Wilson has taken this in stride and said, "Look, I'm just somebody that has been able to do this, that wants to show people that I can do this and do this right." And show the intelligence level, and just do the right thing and lead the team to victory. I understand that. I understand he wants to be above this fray of he's not black enough, and you got to commend the kid whose father was an HBCU president
of Johnson C. Smith University, Charlotte, North Carolina.
See, that's the thing. That's the thing that people don't know. And a lot of this comes from a failure to do research or a failure to just ask the guy. What's wrong with that? That's your teammate. Ask him.
They don't want, in most cases, and I hate to be, I don't want to sound negative, but let's speak truth here. Speak ye the truth and shame the devil. Let's just be truthful here. Some people just don't want to ask, which puts a perception in their mind, and that perception turns to words, and the words turn to the discussion that we're having right now. When you don't ask questions and get your questions answered, unanswered questions turn to speculation, and speculation, 90% of the time, turns into trouble.
I have to really scratch my head at people in the black community that look at folk like Russell Wilson and immediately think, because of, I guess, either because of his skin tone or his skin tone, or his skin tone. Let's
Colin Kaepernick.
Well, let's extend this out. Either his skin tone or his associations, because that also feeds into that.
When you have, I'll use a plain word, smarts about you, you give off a vibe. I'll bring the name of a black quarterback that had the same kind of vibe, and even though he was as dark as us, his blackness was questioned. His name, Randall Cunningham. He took a couple of shots too when he was with the Philadelphia Eagles. Okay? And there were a couple of things said to me by some people that I was talking to back then when he was playing with the Eagles and later on with the Minnesota Vikings that made me question how some black people, I'll go ahead and say it, act in society. We were having a discussion, a bunch of us having a discussion about Randall Cunningham, talking about his playing ability. I had a female make a statement to me which really bothered me. And the statement was, I only like Randall Cunningham because he's black. That bothers me because it's a sign of someone that does not do their research, that does not do their homework, and doesn't know how to, A, be a fan, and I've spoken of this on the morning show many a times, and you've heard me, A, be a fan, and B, ask questions about people. It's one of the first things we're taught.
Tell you what, hold that thought. We'll take one more break, and then we'll really,
all right.
we'll bring this all the way home as much as we can. Talk with Brian Snow from Snowman in the Morning about the blackness or perceived lack thereof from various